This video will have some of the regular stuff that you hear from old heads about Reggie Miller and how we compare players from the 90s to today and all that stuff that I'm sure some of you are tired of hearing. But you should hear me out because I also want to talk about some things that don't normally get mentioned, and I hope I can bring a different kind of perspective to this conversation. Now, in recent years, Reggie Miller has been called overrated, and with the Pacers playing the Bucks in the playoffs, for some reason, a random Damian Lillard vs. Reggie Miller argument has broken out on Twitter. Also, something that contributed to me making this video was, for a very long time, I have always been upset by the video that Legend of Winning made, calling Reggie Miller the most overrated NBA player of all time. And so that's going to kind of be the blueprint of how I have this debate, is a lot of the stuff he said in that video and a lot of the stuff I've seen on Twitter, I am going to have a rebuttal for or some type of argument against. Or if it's a valid argument, I might even agree with him. So before we get into the hypotheticals, which is something that a lot of people go wrong with when it comes to these type of conversations, let's look at the actual facts of Reggie Miller's career. Reggie is a 5-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA selection, and for a period of time was the NBA's all-time three-point champ. He also won a gold medal in 1996. Along with that, he is one of just 9 players in NBA history to be a part of the 50-40-90 club. He leads the Indiana Pacers in 19 career records, 4 single-season records, holds the record for most points scored in a single game, and holds a number of playoff records for the Indiana Pacers. In NBA history, he ranks 20th all-time in win shares, 10th all-time in offensive win shares, 8th in offensive rating, leading the league in it 3 times, 24th in VORP, or value over replacement player. I know some people don't like that stat, but I'm going to use it. 18th in true shooting percentage, which he led the league in twice. And something that really goes unnoticed is how Reggie Miller is 13th all-time in free throw percentage, which is something he led the NBA in 5 different times. Now, something that really goes unnoticed, something that Legend of Winning forgot to mention, and something that a lot of people forget to mention, is the impact that Reggie Miller had on the state of Indiana. Reggie Miller is one of the most, if not the most impactful and important basketball player in the state that is known for basketball. Indiana and the city of Indianapolis eats, sleeps, and breathes basketball. If you aren't from here, you probably don't get it, and you're probably dismissing what I'm saying. But almost every driveway has a basketball hoop. Every neighborhood has basketball courts within walking distance. How well you can hoop sets the pecking order in neighborhoods and schools across the whole state. High school, college, and pro basketball games occupy almost every TV during weekday nights and weekend afternoons. Basketball is huge here. Almost everybody knows something about basketball. So in the state that loves basketball, at every level of the sport, they love Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller is like a god here, not just in Indianapolis, across the whole state of Indiana. Because while Indiana loves basketball, the media has never respected the state or its capital city when it comes to the NBA. The Pacers were never, and have never been, considered a marquee team. Reggie Miller was the first guy since really the ABA days to come here and not just stay here, but be proud to call Indianapolis home. He hopped on tables and pounded his chest to tell you what we were all about as a city and a state. He talked trash, he didn't let people get away with disrespecting our team or our state, he forced you to look at us, and he always repped this city and ferociously competed with the blue and gold on his jersey. Now, something that's kind of seen as a knock against Reggie was he wasn't very strong, he wasn't very fast, he was skinny, he wasn't the most athletic. But while you view that as a bad thing, people who are fans of him, view that as a good thing. That's why people love Reggie. He wasn't faster than your favorite player. He wasn't stronger than your favorite player. He wasn't physically better than your favorite player. But you and your favorite player still had your whole body tense up anytime Reggie Miller touched the basketball with less than a minute left to play in any game. He struck fear into your soul, and you had to respect that. Part of what made Reggie so good was his ability to get into anybody's head. Even Michael Jordan, one of the mentally toughest athletes of all time, let Reggie get to him. Reggie Miller has a talent for getting under people's skin, and that's something that can really swing basketball games in your favor sometimes, especially in the playoffs. Now, I'm sure if you're a Reggie Miller, I'm not going to say hater, but disliker, you're probably saying Reggie had plenty of bad playoff performances. He wasn't really that scary in crunch time. And I'm sure you're trying to dismiss everything I just said. So let's talk about those exact games and playoff series you're thinking of. First, in the 1994 Eastern Conference Finals. In that whole playoffs, Reggie Miller averaged 23 points off 42% from three. He also averaged 24 points off 43, 41, 88 shooting splits in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is the exact series where you're going to try and say that he played bad in. Now, he did have a few off games, but he also had two 30-point games. You cannot place the blame all on Reggie when you had Haywood Workman shooting 16% from three. Now, on to the 1995 Conference Finals. Reggie averaged just a little under 26 points per game on 51, 45, 88 shooting. Yes, he could have done more to help the Pacers win. But again, he's already doing a lot to get them there in the first place. As much as I like Rick Smits, it's not like he's going to stop Orlando Magic Shaquille O'Neal. And Reggie Miller can't really do much about that, so he's doing everything he can. Now, in 1998, that one was rough for Reggie Miller. Just 17 points per game, 41, 43, 91 shooting, in a 7-game series, even with the game winner. If we got the best version of playoff Reggie Miller, the Pacers might have ended the last dance early. But with that being said, let's look at the playoff moments that Reggie did have. And obviously, you have the 1998 game winner against the Bulls, you have 8 points in 9 seconds against the Knicks, but you also have his 15 30-point games against the Knicks in the playoffs, which is second all-time, only behind Michael Jordan. Also, those same 1994 Eastern Conference Finals, in Game 5, Reggie Miller scored 25 points in the fourth quarter and had his iconic choke image towards Spike Lee, where he choked around his neck and also grabbed his nuts. Now, the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 6, Reggie had 34 points to send the Pacers to their first ever NBA Finals appearance. Reggie also had 3 different playoff series where he averaged 30 points per game, and he had 3 playoff series where he shot 50, 40, 90. Along with that, you had the 2001 Game 1 winning shot against the 76ers. Lastly, there's a playoff moment that, for whatever reason, does not get talked about as much. Game 3 of the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals. Playing the Bulls, the Pacers are down 2-0. In the third quarter, Reggie Miller hurt his ankle and was limping very badly. He came back for the fourth quarter, still limping, still hurt, and proceeded to score 13 points in the final 5 minutes to win the game for Indiana. He was on a bad ankle, they were down 2-0 in the series against one of the greatest dynasties in sports history, and Reggie pulled through a win. And then the very next game after that is when he hit his iconic game winner over Michael Jordan. Now, after that, I'm sure you're going to say Reggie was only there because of the team around him. He wasn't a guy who could create his own shot very well. First off, when you say something like that, right then you are admitting that Reggie Miller was a good enough player to have a team built around him. You are admitting Reggie Miller was a franchise guy and a player who franchises wanted to build around. So how can Reggie Miller be a good role player, or the greatest role player of all time, if an entire franchise that made multiple deep playoff runs built the whole team around him? You don't build a whole team around a good role player. Reggie Miller was a star, and he was a star worthy of having a franchise centered around him. But it is true, he did have help. The Davis brothers, Rick Smits, and Mark Jackson, and they were all there to set up or protect Reggie Miller. Reggie was a pure shooter and a pure scorer. He wasn't going to lock somebody up on defense. He wasn't going to rack up assists, and he wasn't going to go into the post and battle guys. So, you do have me there. He had a good team around him. But does that team without Reggie Miller make it to where they made it? No, flat out no, which I know that's something that Legend of Winning said. He said that without Reggie Miller, the Pacers would have been just as good. Politely, you have no idea what you're talking about when you say something like that, because Reggie Miller as a leader, and in those clutch moments, there's only one Reggie Miller. There's only one guy that the Pacers would want when the lights are at their brightest and it's Madison Square Garden and it's time to win a playoff game. And the only guy that you're going to want is Reggie Miller. Without Reggie Miller, who scores 8 points in 9 seconds? Who takes that shot against the 98 Bulls? I love Mark Jackson, Rick Smits, and both the Davis brothers, but they're not doing that. That is only a job that Reggie Miller can do. Now is the point where we're going to get into some of the hypotheticals, and this is the part where a lot of stuff is going to be debatable, but I still think it's important to talk about that stuff. So let's start off with the three-point shooting and the accolades, two of the most opinionated matters when it comes to Reggie Miller. Now, I'm not going to do the thing where I compare Reggie Miller to Steph Curry and say, oh, if Reggie Miller took as many shots as Steph Curry, he would have made this many threes and all that stuff. While there is an argument for that, this is not the video for that argument. But what I do want to talk about is how Reggie Miller, one of the most well-known three-point shooters in NBA history, played under a coach who is very well known for not liking the three-point shot. From 1993 to 1997, Larry Brown was head coach of the Indiana Pacers, and that was during part of Reggie Miller's prime years. And while Larry Brown is a very good coach, he is on record as saying he thinks the three-point shot is ruining the game of basketball. And he's also said while his team didn't shoot many threes, they shot a high percentage. It is well known that Larry Brown doesn't like shooting threes. So I think it should be talked about a little bit more. When we're talking about Reggie Miller, you also have to understand he was not playing under a coach who let him just be free. Now, Reggie's three-point attempts did not go down a crazy amount, and the most threes Reggie Miller ever made was in the final season that Larry Brown coached. But the first season that Larry Brown took over, Reggie's attempts did drop, and there were a few seasons where they were kind of low for him. So if Reggie Miller played in a system that encouraged more three-point shooting and a more free-flowing style of play, or a 7 seconds or less type offense, do we think Reggie Miller would have put up some more shots? I do. Now, it is true Reggie Miller does not have the most awards. And it is true that Reggie Miller didn't really deserve many more All-NBA awards. His 3 that he got were the 3 that he earned. I'm not putting him over Gary Payton. I'm not putting him over Mitch Richmond. Just my opinion. But when it comes to All-Star selections, I think there were a few years where Reggie Miller kind of got screwed over. First, you have the 1990 to 91 season. Reggie averaged 22 points off 50, 34, 91 shooting. He also had 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.3 steals. It's a pretty solid stat line. And I think there is an argument to be made that Reggie Miller should have made it over Hershey Hawkins or Ricky Pierce. More Hawkins than Pierce, but I still think there's an argument for both of those players. Then in 1992 to 93, Reggie was pretty good, and there is kind of an argument that he should have been selected. But I don't think that he should have made it over anybody that was selected. That's just my opinion, but I know some people would argue that. Now, in 1993 to 94, Reggie definitely deserved to make it. That was his 50-40-90 season. Yeah, the year Reggie Miller joined the 50-40-90 club. He was not an all-star. And one of the players who got in over him was B.J. Armstrong. I'm not trying to disrespect B.J. Armstrong. He was a solid player. But that year, he should not have made it in over Reggie. Now, there were 1 or 2 other seasons that Reggie played at an all-star level, but I don't think he deserved to make it. There were guys that played better than him that year, so it's just the luck of the draw and the way it played out. So in this hypothetical, I'm going to say Reggie Miller probably should have had closer to 7 all-star selections as opposed to 5. Now, even with the extra all-star selections, you could probably still say that Reggie doesn't have the accolades to be a Hall of Famer. But my rebuttal to that, my argument against that, and you can say that it's just hearsay or it's just my opinion, which it is, I feel the type of player who makes the Hall of Fame is usually a guy who left a long-lasting impact on the league, and the type of guy that you can't tell the story of the NBA or basketball without talking about him. And I don't think you can tell the story of the NBA, and maybe not even the sport of basketball, without talking about Reggie Miller. He holds or has held just about every record in the history of the Indiana Pacers. He was involved in the Malice at the Palace, 8 points in 9 seconds, The Last Dance. He's one of the best shooters in NBA history, and also being a 50-40-90 club member. All those things, all those unforgettable moments, make it really hard to not talk about him. And along with that, he has his jersey number retired by both UCLA and the Indiana Pacers. And then, of course, his biggest and most iconic moment is that choke picture. A picture that has been used so often that it is widely known by people who don't even watch basketball. It has elevated to a level that is very rare, where that picture and what it means is bigger than the sport. So when we're talking about Reggie Miller, the Knick killer, before Dame time, there was Miller time. He wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the most athletic, and he wasn't even the most well-liked. But no matter how you feel about him, he lives in your head in infamy for one reason or another. You think about Reggie Miller when you think about basketball for one reason or another. Whether it's because you hate him or you love him. The reason that you hate him or love him is because of how good he was. And the reason you talk about him is because of how good he was. And that is what makes Reggie Miller as good as we say he is. I'm Limitless Pulse. I'ma catch y'all next time. Legend of winning. Please never speak on the Indiana Pacers or Reggie Miller ever again. I doubt you're ever going to see this video, but just never talk about him again. Unless you're going to open your mouth and say something positive. See y'all later.